In my previous life, my sister Zai adopted a boy, while I Zai adopted a girl. Zai coveted our family's fortune and mocked me, saying, "What's the point of raising a daughter?" But later, the boy she adopted, Leo, got into a fight at school, causing a death, and we had to pay compensation until our assets were completely drained. Meanwhile, the girl I adopted, Grace, caught a director's eye, became a child star, and earned money hand over fist. Unable to accept this truth, Zai incited Leo to kill me. When I opened my eyes, we were back at the orphanage. This time, Zai eagerly embraced the docile little girl, Grace. "From now on, I am your mother." I watched the silent boy, Leo, lower his head, smile, and hold my hand. My sister had lived 2 lives, yet still hadn't grasped the meaning of fate is in one's own hands. Both she and I had been reborn, returning to the day we visited the orphanage to adopt a child. That day was identical to our previous life. The director led Leo and Grace out. Leo was covered in injuries, his face expressionless, his eyes full of wariness. Grace anxiously twisted the hem of her dress, looking utterly pitiful. Both children were only 6 years old but lacked the innocence of other children. This time, before I could speak, my sister hugged Grace tightly. "From now on, I am your mother." Grace, startled, instinctively tried to pull away, but quickly understood and nodded shyly. My sister smiled, pleased, but then cast a disgusted glance at Leo, perhaps recalling the previous life, and couldn't help but frown. This child, though small, is incredibly strong and aggressive. If he's like this now, his future will surely be. Leo keenly sensed the malice, resentful but unable to react. He just bowed his head and bit his lip. "He will certainly become a decisive person who achieves great things," I interrupted my sister, gently holding Leo's hand. The teachers smiled warmly, but their eyes held a hint of doubt as they looked at my sister. As we left the office, I faintly overheard the conversation behind us. Didn't Zai specifically ask for a smart, independent boy? Why did she adopt Yang's daughter? Let them be. Anyway, the 2 most troublesome children have been adopted, so we have less to worry about. Speaking of which, her younger sister, Zai, seems too gentle. I'm afraid Leo will give her headaches. Watching my sister carry Grace into the car, coaxing her along, I couldn't help but let out a cold laugh. Did she truly believe Grace became the nation's daughter in our last life purely out of luck? My name is Zai. My sister, Zai, is 2 years older than me. Our parents only had the 2 of us, and neither of us intended to marry. After constant pressure to ensure the Zai family line didn't end, my father instructed each of us to adopt a child. His intention was clear. Whoever raised the more capable child would have more say and a larger share of the inheritance. Compared to my father's intentions, Zai ambition was even more blatant. She specifically instructed the director to choose an intelligent, independent boy, intending to groom him into a decisive CEO. The director chose Leo simply because he constantly got into fights at the orphanage. Even older children wouldn't dare mess with him. Grace, on the other hand, was the prettiest child there, but also the most timid, frequently bullied. So young, yet she already showed signs of depression and autism. The director worried that if things continued, both children would face trouble and harm the orphanage's reputation, which is why he introduced them. In our previous life, Zai took Leo without hesitation while disparaging me. What good is raising a daughter? No matter how talented, she wouldn't dare speak up or be counted on. She thought victory was assured, unaware that under her pampering, Leo became increasingly violent, eventually bullying a classmate to death. At that time, Leo was under 14, so he avoided severe legal punishment. But to compensate the victim's family, Zai had to pull strings and spent nearly all her savings. This incident deeply disappointed my father. Not only did he refuse to help financially, but he also explicitly stripped Zai of her inheritance rights. Meanwhile, under my guidance, Grace gradually became confident and lively. She even caught a director's eye, landed a role in a popular TV series, entered the entertainment industry, and became the beloved nation's daughter. My father was preparing to hand the company over to me. My sister, consumed by hatred, incited Leo to kill me. After all, Leo isn't of legal age, so he won't go to jail. What's the difference between killing one person and killing 2? My dear sister, trying to compete with me, wait for the next life. Oh, and thank you for leaving me such a talented, money-making daughter. I couldn't hear the rest. stabbed multiple times, I died right before Zai Yun's eyes. Now reborn, she still looked just like her past self, with that hateful, smug expression. I never thought there'd actually be a next life, did I? Well, karma comes full circle. This time, it's my turn to enjoy the blessings. You can have that, juvenile delinquent. Let's see you suffer the pain I once endured. She was truly not easy to deal with. On Leo's very first day of school, trouble struck. After class, I witnessed him pinning a classmate to the ground and beating him. When adults pulled him away, the other boy's face was bruised and miserable. Leo also had injuries on his hands and face. Faced with everyone's criticism, he stubbornly stood there, not saying a word, let alone apologizing. The other parent refused to let it go. If the police hadn't intervened, Leo might have been beaten by the boy's father. I quickly shielded Leo, repeatedly bowing an apology, forcing a gentle smile and soft words. An apology is enough, so if I beat your son up and then apologize, that's okay? The other parent shouted. Like father, like son. What kind of stray dog dares lay a hand on my child? Where's the principal? Why haven't you expelled this kind of student yet? The parent was still furious, yelling loudly. The crowd grew larger. Zai Yun arrived to pick up Grace, and seeing the scene, she seemed to have been waiting for this. She smirked. Oh my, such a strong hand, hardly like a child, is it? This is just the first day of school, and it's already like this. Well, take your time and suffer. With that, she didn't even glance at me, pulling Grace away and turning her back. Mommy's taking you to the mall to buy a pretty dress, sweetie. Don't worry about homework. You're going to be a star. Don't look at that rude boy anymore. I ignored her, took out my business card, and handed it to the other parent, gently stating that I would cover all medical expenses and compensation for damages. The police, seeing my cooperative attitude, also helped mediate. Perhaps the Zai family's reputation still held some weight. The parent looked at the business card, still angry, but reluctantly accepted the transfer, muttering curses before leaving. Before he left, he shot me a glare and mumbled a few insulting words. I pretended not to hear, took Leo's hand, and got into the car, not wanting to make things more complicated. He remained silent, head bowed, and I didn't press him. It wasn't until Leo realized the car was heading towards the orphanage that he suddenly tensed, glancing at me furtively, wanting to speak but holding back. I stopped the car in front of a hospital and took him to treat his wounds. It's been a long day, the food at home must be cold. What do you want to eat? Mom will take you. I looked at the small bandage on his forehead and smiled. You got hurt today, you need some good food. Leo looked bewildered. I caused trouble, aren't you going to hit me? He hesitated, then glanced out the window. I thought you were taking me back to the orphanage. Why would I take my son back to the orphanage, silly? I believe you had a reason for what happened today. If you want to talk about it, speak. If not, that's fine too. It's already resolved. Leo looked at me in surprise, a flicker of light in his eyes. That kid was bullying my deskmate, and he called me a busybody, so I hit him. I know I was wrong. From now on, I will definitely. I smiled and cut him off. From now on, you must protect yourself well. My little hero of justice, my strong boy. Leo chuckled bashfully, touching his wound. I couldn't help but remember the previous life. Zai Yun never asked why Leo got into fights. She just threw money at the other parents and used the Zai family name to intimidate them. At home, she even praised Leo as a good son, saying he knew how to establish his authority on the first day of school. Keep it up. Anyone who dares to mess with you, just use your fists. With the Zai family behind you, what is there to fear? You are the future heir of the Zai family. That girl Zai Yue adopted can't dream of anything. Your grandfather only likes strong, decisive personalities. When he was young, Leo didn't understand what decisive meant. He only knew that he was praised and encouraged for hitting people. Perhaps it was then that the seed of evil was planted in his heart. In this life, I absolutely would not let him become the embodiment of evil. Leo was genuinely intelligent and studied very hard. In fact, Grace was the same in our previous life. But in this life, after being adopted by Zai Yun, Grace barely had any time for schooling. Zai Yun said education was useless, that Grace was destined to be a star. Instead of wasting time on academics, she should focus on cultivating her image to pave the way for her future. So she enrolled Grace in all sorts of talent classes: piano, dance, vocal, modeling. Every day, Zai Yun would pick Grace up early from school for these extra skill lessons. Her dressing style was so mature that she didn't look like an elementary school student. Teachers at the school repeatedly requested parent meetings, but Zai Yun, arrogant, paid no mind. One time, I happened to witness it. My daughter's going into entertainment. Can you please stop wasting her time? It's fine if she doesn't do homework and test scores don't matter. Teacher song, are you done talking? One piano lesson costs hundreds of yuan. Can you compensate for that? Zai Yun was unreasonable and defiant. From then on, Grace's homeroom teacher also gave up. Zai Yun became increasingly bold, often taking Grace out of school for performances. She created a video account for the girl and began to accumulate fame. Later, Grace started receiving children's clothing endorsements that earned money, making Zai Yun ecstatic. I, however, was incredibly worried. After all, I had taken care of Grace for 8 years in my previous life. Even though she wasn't my daughter in this life, the feelings in my heart never faded. Grace was still young, her worldview not yet fully formed. If Zai Yun continued to raise her like this, who knew what her future would become? But Zai Yun and I didn't live together, and I rarely saw Grace. During a family gathering, Zai Yun incessantly boasted to my father about how many followers Grace had and how much money each endorsement earned. I couldn't bear it anymore and gently advised that children were still young, there was no need to rush to make money, focusing on studies would be better. Before I could finish, Zai Yun scoffed, cutting me off. You're just jealous, aren't you? Can't get the grapes, so you say they're sour? Annoyed that my daughter has a promising future. Isn't your son getting into fights every other day? Can't stand to see someone else's daughter doing well. If you have time to worry about Grace, why don't you manage your own son? Don't let him kill someone again. After having Grace, Zai Yun became engrossed in training a child star and no longer paid attention to Leo. She had no idea that the boy who was once a troublemaker in the previous life had now, under my guidance, become a responsible, understanding, and filial young man. As for Grace, you should really focus on your studies. I finally couldn't hold back, gently patting Grace's shoulder and advising her before leaving. You don't need to worry about me. Grace suddenly slapped my hand away and pushed me. Her face showed an anger I'd never seen in the previous life. Zai Yun emerged from the room, saw the scene, and shot me a smug glare, leaning in to whisper, Zai Yue, don't forget that little murderer is your son. Stay away from Grace, she won't like you. I bowed my head and said nothing, waiting for her to lead Grace away before returning to my room. In my palm, I clutched a small piece of paper. It was what Grace had secretly slipped into my hand when she pushed me. It read, Mom, rest assured. Just 4 simple words struck me like lightning, my whole body stiffening. It was Grace's delicate handwriting, the one I had nurtured for 8 years in my previous life. She had also been reborn, but the joy was fleeting. Immediately, a chill spread through my heart. So, after Zai Yun and I both died tragically in the previous life, my Grace couldn't live in peace either. Was it an accident or was she harmed? I couldn't help but recall Leo's cruel nature in the previous life. He had killed a classmate, killed me, and then even killed Zai Yun. Could it be that he didn't spare Grace either? I didn't dare to think further, only constantly reminding myself that even if it were true, that was only the previous life. Now, Leo was a principled, responsible, kind, and courageous child. What I needed to do was continue to teach him well and find a way to protect Grace, to prevent her from being led astray by Zai Yun's twisted values. Now that I knew Grace had also been reborn, I felt somewhat relieved. In the previous life, she was an excellent student. In this life, even if Zai Yun led her astray, her studies probably wouldn't be affected much. And those expensive talent classes could help Grace develop more comprehensively. Come to think of it, the time was approaching for Grace to be chosen by a director for an online drama, just like in the previous life. With Zai Yun's personality, she would certainly treat Grace as a cash cow, exploiting her for all she was worth. It seemed I had to prevent that seemingly golden opportunity this time. The day Grace received the audition invitation, Zai Yun was ecstatic like she'd won the lottery, bringing her home to show off. Seeing Leo politely greet my father, "Hello, Grandpa," Zai Yun froze for a moment. After all, in the previous life, Leo had never known the meaning of politeness. At the dinner table, Zai Yun continuously boasted to my father. Grace has been invited to audition by a director, Dad. Look how talented she is. She's definitely going to be a big star. Grace, don't make your grandfather lose face. You must perform well. Grace bit her lip, looking a little uneasy. My father smiled reassuringly. Just do your best. You're still just a child. What star? My reputation doesn't depend on you. He heard that Grace would be auditioning for the role of a childhood poetess this time. My father advised her to dress simply and innocently, saying it would be more suitable. Zayun, your recent outfits for Grace are a bit too mature, I cautiously interjected. Sure enough, Zayun's face immediately darkened. She pouted unhappily. But before she could retort, my father nodded in agreement. Don't be so self-important. Children should look like children. Yes, Dad. Zayun forced a smile, reluctantly agreeing, not forgetting to shoot me a glare. I calmly looked at Grace, and she secretly exchanged glances with me. The next day, Zayun took Grace to the audition. I secretly drove behind them, only to see Grace wearing a tight black cheongsam, a halter neck revealing her shoulders, her small waist cinched, her lips painted bright red. Even her long hair was curled and draped over her shoulders. Zayun clearly didn't believe my words, dressing Grace up like a socialite from the Republic era. She didn't know the circumstances of the previous life's audition, and filled with animosity towards me, she thought I was jealous of her talented daughter. How could she listen to me? Sure enough, less than half an hour later, Zayun emerged with a dark face, angrily twisting Grace's arm as they walked, looking as if she were scolding her. Grace walked with her head down, saying nothing, almost being dragged along. It was clear the audition had failed. I secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Looking up again, I saw many reporters converging from all directions. Zayun immediately changed her expression, taking Grace's hand, pretending to be gentle and composed. But the reporters quickly noticed the anomaly and immediately surrounded them, asking questions. Zayun had no choice but to compose herself and deal with them. Thank you for your concern, everyone. Due to heavy academic pressure and the role not being a perfect fit, Grace will not be participating in this film. We will focus on preparing for her elementary school graduation exam soon. Grace listened silently, her eyes red-rimmed. But when she heard Zayun say that, her eyes suddenly lit up. Really, Mom? I can go to school? That's great. Thank you, Mom. I finally get to go to school. Grace cried tears of joy. But her words stunned the surrounding reporters. After pressing her, they learned that for the past few years, Grace had been forced into all sorts of talent classes, having almost no time for academic studies. I don't want to dance, I don't want vocal training. I just want to go to school like my friends. I haven't been to class in so long, I even missed my midterm exam. I promised to give a birthday gift to my deskmate, but her birthday was half a month ago. I don't want to be an actress, I don't want to be a star at all. Grace cried as she spoke, her face covered in tears. She also revealed the reason for her failed audition. The director found her attire and demeanor unsuitable for the image of a childhood poetess. But that wasn't the outfit I chose. I don't like wearing it at all. Grace's voice was still childish, but her eyes were full of mature resentment. Angrily, she wiped away the bright red lipstick with the back of her hand and tied her hair into a ponytail. I don't like makeup. I don't like my hair down. I dream of wearing a uniform to school every day like my friends, but Mom said I look ugly that way, not charming at all, and the director wouldn't like it. Zayun's face completely darkened. Ignoring the presence of the reporters, she glared at Grace and cursed. Shut up, you jinx, you good-for-nothing. I've raised you for so many years. Talent class fees cost over 200,000 yuan. You useless child, you couldn't even pass an audition. You've made me lose so much face. And you dare to fabricate stories here? If you can't be a star, then get back to the orphanage. Zayun was so agitated that her words unintentionally revealed almost the entire truth of the past years. Grace's face turned pale. She kept whispering, I'm sorry, don't hit me, Mom, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have asked to go to school. Reporters furiously snapped photos and recorded audio. Excuse me, Ms. Zai, is what Grace said true? Is the Zai family adopting orphans just to train stars? You're depriving a child of her right to education. Do you know that? A bold reporter raised a suspicion. Is the Zai family rushing to put children into the entertainment industry like this to launder money for the Zai group? Reporters fired questions one after another, the topic growing increasingly sensitive. When she heard the Zai family name, Zayun finally realized the danger, panicked, and forced a smile to explain. Misunderstanding, it's all a misunderstanding. It's just my impatient nature, I spoke without thinking. Actually, whether or not to enter the entertainment industry isn't important to the Zai family. We just want our children to be happy and ambitious. I just saw that Grace had talent, which is why I had that idea. Of course, studies are still the top priority right now. Zayun forced a few perfunctory smiles, then hurriedly pulled Grace away. I stood from a distance, watching her put Grace into the car, while she herself anxiously made a phone call, then turned and went in a different direction. It seemed she knew fear now and was trying to salvage her image and losses. But no matter how fast she wasn't faster than me. The entire story was already trending on social media. I had prepared everything last night and sent it to various media accounts, just waiting for today's photos and videos to be released. In less than half an hour, it would flood the entire network. My Grace truly was the talented little actress from the previous life. Her acting was impeccable. It wasn't in vain that I spent a large sum of money to hire reporters to wait at the film set. Soon, both Grace's and Zai Yun's names were trending. The entire internet cursed Zai Yun as a venomous serpent, sweet on the outside, malicious on the inside, with no maternal affection whatsoever. Poor little Grace, coming out of the orphanage. She thought she was entering heaven, but unexpectedly fell into a new vortex. She lived in luxury on the surface, but didn't even have basic human rights. Zai Yun clearly adopted Grace because she was pretty, intending to use her to earn money later. The Zai group had already been controversial, but luckily, because I, the second daughter of the Zai family, also adopted a child and took very good care of him, netizens viewed this as Zai Yun's individual behavior, helping the company avoid implication. At the same time, the director of the film crew who organized the audition also trended. The content revolved around his professionalism, seriousness, and constant emphasis on quality. When netizens learned the details of the audition process, they praised the director for his profound vision, not just looking at appearance, but also focusing on inner character, showing he was a man of culture and artistic taste. Of course, this trending topic was also something I paid for, considering it compensation and a response, because the failed audition result was something I had discussed with the director in advance. The first time Grace met the director was at school. It was because he saw Grace's pure and diligent demeanor that he had the idea to invite her to play the role of a childhood poetess. Zai Yun knew nothing of this. She thought the director had seen Grace's video account and then invited her to audition, so she put on a knowledgeable front, dressing the girl maturely to curry favor with the director. Cleverness turned into foolishness. Grace and I collaborated perfectly, changing the entire script in this life. Now, public opinion about Grace was exploding, attracting significant attention. Soon, Zai Yun was criticized by educational authorities and called out across social media as a negative example. High-level departments also took this opportunity to remind guardians of child actors that they must never deprive children of their right to education. From this, Grace could finally go to school with peace of mind. 3 days later, Zai Yun finally got to see Grace again. She stormed into the house in a fit of rage, yelling, "Grace, get out here!" But the person who emerged was my father. "Zai Yun, how long do you intend to cause trouble? Didn't I warn you not to be so self-righteous?" My father's face was extremely gloomy. Even though the group wasn't affected this time, it was still shameful for his eldest daughter, Zai Yun, to cause such a stir. I stood beside him, advising him to calm down. Zai Yun glared at me, about to argue, but my father cut her off. "If you and that girl cause any more trouble, get out of the Zai family home." After saying that, he turned and went into his study, leaving Zai Yun standing there in utter bewilderment. These words were nothing short of an ultimatum. Zai Yun adopted Grace originally to contend for the group's inheritance. Now, seeing that my father no longer favored Grace and the path to stardom was almost closed, Grace suddenly became a discarded card. Although Grace said she wanted to study, her grades weren't good after years of interruption. Zai Yun fell silent. Grace, seeing the situation was bad, reverted to her docile and timid demeanor from the orphanage days. She bowed her head, approached Zai Yun, and softly called, "Mommy." Seeing this, Zai Yun's anger flared, and she couldn't help but deliver a harsh slap. You good-for-nothing, don't call me Mom. Get back to the orphanage. You ungrateful wretch, I don't have a daughter like you. I'm telling you, I've spent how much money on you over the years. I remember every single penny. Even if you sell yourself, you'll have to pay it all back to me. Zai Yun cursed so harshly that I couldn't bear to listen anymore. I quickly stepped in to mediate, expressing my willingness to pay that sum on Grace's behalf. Unexpectedly, seeing me, Zai Yun's anger intensified. "Are you going to pretend to be a good person again? Don't think you can be smug just because this little girl is useless. Look at what kind of child you've raised. After scolding me, Zai-yun turned to leave. Grace cried and ran to hug her, but Zai-yun roughly pushed her away, sending her tumbling to the ground. Don't loiter in front of me again, go back to where you came from. Grace, stunned, asked. Mommy, you don't want Grace anymore. Useless, a parasite, what do I need you for? Zai-yun stormed off, the villa door slamming shut. Grace was abandoned. I and Grace couldn't help but burst out laughing. Finally, Grace was back with her mother. All of Zai-yun's actions and words had been clearly recorded by the camera. Right and wrong, good and bad, would soon be revealed. My Grace finally got back on her right path. To avoid arousing Zai-yun's suspicion, Grace deliberately performed at an average level during the elementary school graduation exam. Luckily, when she entered 6th grade, she and Leo were placed in the same class. I specifically instructed Leo to protect his little sister. Perhaps due to puberty, Leo became increasingly taciturn. There was always a sense of distance between him and Grace. This distance mainly came from Grace. She was still haunted by the memory of the previous life, the scene of me being stabbed to death by Leo. When facing him, she always maintained a cold attitude. Leo didn't understand why, and over time, he also felt hurt. I was extremely worried but helpless. I could only rely on time. The next month seemed peaceful but was actually a brewing storm. Later, Zai-yun started coming home more often but still acted as if she didn't see Grace, even occasionally making a few sarcastic remarks. Because Grace's grades were only average, and the video channel previously set up had long been neglected, her follower count had plummeted. In Zai-yun's eyes, Grace was truly useless. As for Leo, new and old injuries constantly appeared on his body, which pleased Zai-yun, who believed he was about to revert to his murderous ways. This worried me greatly, because over the years I had realized that there was always a wildness and impulsiveness in Leo's core. Although I had tried to guide him in the right direction, who could guarantee that every spontaneous action stemmed from kindness? Perhaps letting go was better than restricting. Therefore, in the summer of 7th grade, when Leo expressed an interest in joining a free combat training camp, I only hesitated for a moment before agreeing. The camp was held elsewhere, lasted a month, and was fully enclosed. After the course, he would participate in a provincial-level competition. If his performance was good, there would even be a chance to be recruited into the provincial reserve team. Before he left, I told Leo to stay true to himself and temper his will. Whatever the future held didn't matter. I just wanted him to do what he loved. Grace, rarely, also came to the bus station to see him off, but as always, she remained silent, hiding all her emotions. After seeing Leo off, I focused on planning for Grace. Becoming an actress had always been Grace's dream. Last time, she had to refuse that big opportunity after much deliberation. According to my memories of the previous life, this summer would be her second chance, a supporting role in a modern TV series. It was this role that helped Grace become the nation's daughter. I didn't want Grace to give up her dream because of Zai-yun. This time, even if Buddha stood in my way or a god blocked my path, I wouldn't be afraid. I had already died once, after all. After meticulous preparations, Grace joined the film crew. Of course, Zai-yun wasn't easily fooled. The day behind-the-scenes photos leaked, Zai-yun immediately appeared. This time, she completely changed her previous cold demeanor, smiling warmly and intimately, just like when she returned to the orphanage. My dear, you joined a film crew? Why didn't you tell Mom? I told you you're definitely going to be a star. Starting tomorrow, I'll accompany you to the set. You're still young, the entertainment industry is very complicated. Don't let bad people trick you. Zai-yun spoke, intentionally glancing at me, her implication clear. I smiled coldly, watching her as if observing a performance, wanting to see how thick-skinned she was, and she was clearly thicker-skinned than I imagined. Grace, how much is the fee for this movie, dear? Grace calmly replied, 3 years ago, I remember you said hundreds of times that you weren't my mother, and you didn't need me anymore. Grace's eyes were calm but resolute. Her face now lacked its former fragility. Although only 14, combining both lives, she had experienced nearly 20 years of life. How could someone with Zai-yun's clumsy acting skills fool her? Sure enough, Zai-yun could only force an awkward smile. Zai-yun tried to smooth things over. How could that be? I was just angry for a moment. Grace, don't be mad. Then keep being angry, Grace replied coldly. Anyway, I don't need you to admit defeat. Grace, what kind of talk is that? I've been gentle with you and you still. Zai Yun gritted her teeth. Don't forget, I'm the one who adopted you from the orphanage. I have all the paperwork. How much did I spend raising and educating you over the years? 213,600 yuan, Grace coolly interrupted. You've said it many times. Don't worry, I'll pay it back. I'll pay you back after this movie is finished. Zai Yun's eyes immediately lit up upon hearing this. She guessed Grace's fee was not small and was even less willing to let go. Her expression changed instantly, like flipping a switch, immediately becoming gentle. You silly girl, how can a mother and daughter harbor resentment overnight? What money? I'm just afraid you're still young and naive and might get scammed. Film earnings can't just be given to anyone. You're not of age, you can't get a bank card. The fee must be transferred to a relative's account. Zai Yun was convinced the money would be transferred to her asterisk account, which is why she began to sow discord. Unfortunately, she miscalculated. Would I covet a child's money? A calm, stern voice echoed from the study door. Zai Yun, you truly disappoint me. Besides money, do you have any regard for family affection or righteousness? If I handed the Zai group over to you, I'm afraid everything would fall apart. My father's face was calm, but his soft words poured a bucket of cold water on Zai Yun's ambitions. Her face turned pale, her lips trembled, her eyes filled with resentment. Why is it you? Zai Yue, why is it still you? I clearly knew everything, held everything in my hands. Why is the outcome still you? I'm not reconciled. Zai Yun was almost frantic, her eyes blazing as she stared at Grace. I brought you out of the orphanage, I raised you, I paid for your training. Zai Grace, do you think you're fully grown? You're just a little girl who hasn't even hit puberty. If you don't obediently come back in the next 3 days, I guarantee the entire internet will be full of rumors about you sleeping around for roles. If you hate me, then no one gets to live in peace. Zai Yun, are you crazy? What nonsense are you talking about? Oh, what have I done? She smiled maliciously. Even if Zai Grace didn't do anything, people will believe it if her adoptive mother openly accuses her. Do you think you'll still have a place in this industry? Zai Yun, you're truly insane. How dare you defame your own adoptive daughter? Do you have any regard for the Zai family's reputation? My father stood frozen, his eyes filled with disbelief, as if he'd never known her. What does the Zai family's reputation have to do with me? I'm not the heir. Zai Yun laughed like a madwoman. If I can't have it, I'll destroy it all. Zai Grace, think carefully. Either give me all the money you've earned and live your life as a star, or I'll drag you to hell and ruin you from your very first role. Grace's fingers trembled slightly, her face pale, looking at Zai Yun with complex eyes. Besides hatred, there was something else deep within. Grace, don't be afraid, we won't let. Before I could finish, I'll go with you, Mom. Grace pulled her hand away from mine and walked towards Zai Yun. I was stunned. Grace, I'm sorry, Mom, I can't give up this path. I want to be an actress, I want to act, I want to shine. Even if I'm ruined, I'm willing. Grace's frail figure walked out of the villa just like that. For the next month, she didn't return. I had to send someone to secretly follow her, fearing anything unexpected. Thankfully, for most of that month, Grace was on set, filming intensively to finish before school started. Leo, meanwhile, was completely secluded in the closed training camp. This month was torture for me. Zai Yun, on the other hand, was utterly smug. The events of 3 years ago had almost been forgotten. Grace, with her new look in the film, was extremely captivating, docile, cute, attracting many older sister fans and young mothers. Zai Yun also learned to be cunning, appearing incredibly gentle in front of outsiders, even deliberately reading books while waiting on set. She tried to cultivate the image of an educated mother, which was forced but effective, at least according to the media accounts and internet trolls she bought. Thanks to her efforts, her relationship with my father gradually softened. She no longer went ballistic and aimed her anger at me as before. I knew she was still eyeing the Zai group, but all I wanted was for Grace and Leo to be safe. The day Grace finished filming was also the day Leo completed his training and returned. Zai Yun brought Grace home to celebrate. It happened to coincide with when I was preparing to go out to pick up Leo. No need to go pick him up. That son of yours is a gang leader now. How impressive. He even came home with a group of henchmen following him. Zai Yun shot me a sarcastic glance, swaggered into the house, and immediately tattled to my father. I stepped outside and saw several large displacement motorcycles parked at the gate. A group of tall, muscular teenagers stood gathered, each exuding sharpness and a formidable aura. Is this Brother Leo's house? It looks so grand. When are you going to treat us to a meal and broaden our horizons? Yeah, Brother Leo. Leo had tanned 2 shades darker. His chest and biceps were noticeably more developed, and his eyes had become sharper. He had a few new wounds on his body and face, looking exactly like the gang members in crime movies. Zai-yun stood in front of me, sneering and mocking, but when directly facing Leo, she didn't dare say a word. After all, the teenage boy, now over a head taller than her, had muscular arms that made others hold their breath. Most importantly, in the previous life, Zai-yun had personally witnessed how he killed someone, so in this life, she naturally didn't dare to easily provoke him. Anyway, she thought she had Grace under her control, her money tree about to bear fruit, so she had nothing more to worry about. Leo was still taciturn. After greeting everyone, he just buried his head in his food. His hungry, wolf-like eating made others shiver. I found an opportunity to tell him about what had happened with Grace over the past month. School was starting soon, and the two of them were in the same class again. Although there was still a distance between them, I specifically instructed Leo to protect Grace. Grace was still living with Zai-yun, and I truly couldn't rest easy, worried that Zai-yun might harbor evil intentions again and harm my daughter. And reality proved my worries were not unfounded. After finishing the film, Grace received several small endorsements, but Zai-yun grew increasingly greedy, no longer content with those small crumbs. She began to run around everywhere, even planning to take Grace, who was still a minor, to social gatherings, and that's exactly what she did. One night in late August, it rained torrentially. Leo didn't come home. I was on pins and needles, contacting his homeroom teacher. I only found out that Zai-yun had picked Grace up at 5 p.m. Leo had followed them. The teacher thought something had happened at the Zai family's house, so she let the 2 children leave school early without confirming with me. Outsiders only knew that Zai-yun and I were biological sisters. Who would have thought we had become sworn enemies? I was frantic with worry. I called Zai-yun, but as expected, no one answered. It had been over 5 hours since the 2 left school. I immediately reported it to my father, asking him to use all his connections to search for them. Although he was surprised and anxious, he didn't understand why I was so distraught. I couldn't explain that the reason for my immense anxiety was that in the previous life, my Grace had also been lost on a rainy night just like this. Just to get close to a tycoon, Zai-yun had tricked Grace into going to a party, personally spiking her drink. When she woke up, Grace found herself naked in bed, covered in wounds, her spirit utterly broken. She called me, but the police informed her that I had been stabbed to death by Leo. With no will to live, Grace looked out at the pouring rain and threw herself from the 17th floor. It was early morning then, and no one discovered her. The heavy rain also caused severe flooding, with water submerging the basement and elevator, rising to the 1st floor. It wasn't until Grace's bloated body was found that she was discovered. After many questions, Grace had tremblingly recounted this story, the shadow in her soul that she never wanted to mention. Now, I looked out the window, the rain pouring down, hating myself for being too careless, thinking I had changed fate, but forgetting that Zai-yun's greed and cruelty had never changed. Besides reporting to the police, I also spent a large sum of money hiring many reporters and paparazzi in the entertainment industry to search every hotel and club they had frequented. After just one night, the entire social network was shaken. The 2 children adopted by the Zai family were both missing. The Zai family no longer had the presence of mind to worry about public opinion. Everyone knew that a newly famous child actress disappearing for a night could very well have met a horrible fate. But for me, as long as Grace was alive, that was enough. Paparazzi truly lived up to their name. They were terrifyingly sharp. Very quickly, someone reported seeing Grace at a private club, seemingly with Zai-yun. Grace looked flushed as if she had been drinking. I immediately led people there. Rainwater had flooded the basement, the elevator was broken, the entire building lost power, and surveillance cameras weren't working. We struggled to climb to the floor the paparazzi indicated. In the living room, on the dining table, leftover food lay scattered and messy. I searched every room but found no trace of Grace or Leo. The torrential rain still showed no sign of stopping. I stood by the window, trembling all over, almost not daring to look down. I was afraid that in the flooded water below in the basement, a pale body would surface. I don't remember how I left the building. The freezing water was up to my knees, rain lashed my face, making it impossible to open my eyes. In that blurry vision, I seemed to see a familiar figure. It was Leo. I joyfully shouted, stumbling forward but constantly tripping over water and obstacles. It was Leo, with his broad shoulders and strong arms. Though still a child, he already exuded the aura of a mature man. Grace, with her slender figure, was cradled in his arms, held so tightly that not a drop of rain could touch her. "Mom, I protected her, don't worry." He smiled, a wound on his forehead, the blood washed clean by the rain. That moment brought tears to many reporters' eyes. Grace was hospitalized for a day and a night before gradually recovering her strength. Leo, being physically robust, only suffered a few superficial wounds. This disappearance case caused a public sensation. Reporters had already surrounded the hospital room. I intended to ask them to leave so the children could rest. But Grace said there were things that needed to be clarified, things that had been pending for a long time. She sat halfway up in her hospital bed, facing the cameras and reporters, recounting the entire incident that happened that night. Zai-Yun had unilaterally arranged for Grace to attend a liquor party. From her clothes to her perfume, everything was chosen by Zai-Yun. She even threatened that if Grace wanted to continue acting, she had to go. At first, Grace thought it was just a normal social gathering, but when she drank the water that was given to her, she immediately felt dizzy, her limbs weak. In a daze, she saw a middle-aged man smiling obscenely, approaching her. Fortunately, when Zai-Yun picked Grace up from school, Leo, out of worry, had secretly followed them. While Grace was in the restroom, Zai-Yun personally put drugs into her drink. This scene was clearly recorded by Leo, who had bribed a waiter to film it. He hid his phone behind a vase. The entire conversation between Zai-Yun and the entertainment industry tycoons about the deal was also fully recorded. Leo couldn't find an opportunity to warn Grace. He could only risk rushing in after she was taken away. He knocked out the man and was also injured in the process. Fearing they would be discovered, he used curtains to tie the man up and hid in the room with Grace. He wanted to call for help, but the heavy rain caused a complete power outage in the building. His phone, having filmed for too long, also ran out of battery. It wasn't until nearly dawn that Leo dared to carry Grace and escape through the rain. The two recounted the story in great detail, only omitting one thing. Grace had known about this plot beforehand. She and Leo had discussed it and decided to use the same trick against Zai-Yun, exposing her true colors and those men. It was just that the situation happened too suddenly, and they didn't have time to inform me, so my anxiety and despair unintentionally became the best camouflage. No one expected this earth-shattering exposé to be the plan of two children. That bastard is still tied up in the room. She didn't even get to touch Grace. It's lucky I didn't beat her to death. If it weren't for the upcoming international competition, I wouldn't have held back at all, Leo said, clenching his fists and cursing indignantly. I choked back tears, patting his shoulder, unable to utter a word. After a month of closed training, Leo became the strongest athlete on his team, winning the championship at the competition. He was admired by his teammates, who all called him Brother Leo. Next week, he would participate in tryouts for the provincial team. His coach rated Leo very highly, saying he had a bright future. He recounted this excitedly, while I remained dazed, my mind only on the fact that he had saved Grace. Yes, it was Leo who saved Grace. He truly was a spirited and decisive person. Now, Grace and Leo had successively provided full evidence to the reporters. Videos recorded Zai-Yun's rage after the failed audition 3 years ago. Evidence showed that I was the one who nurtured and covered Grace's expenses all these years. Videos recorded Zai-Yun's outburst of anger and threats against Grace's reputation when her advances were rejected. Clips of Zai-Yun spiking the drink and negotiating deals with tycoons. Additionally, Grace provided evidence of Zai-Yun bribing cultural officials, including the director who had rejected her in the previous audition. This was also publicly announced as the result of my prior discussion with the director. Because Zai-Yun was too controlling, Grace couldn't even go to school with peace of mind, so I had to heartlessly refuse that promising debut opportunity. Only when she became worthless would Zai-Yun temporarily let the girl go. The director also stated that Zai-Yun always tried to push Grace into the entertainment industry, while I did my utmost to guide her back to her studies. Comparing the two sides, who was right and who was wrong was all too clear. All of this left the veteran reporters present at the scene wide-eyed, because the person before them was not a celebrity in her 20s, but a girl not even 14 years old. Zai Yun's exploitation and manipulation to that extent were truly too cruel and inhumane. According to the law, if the relationship between adoptive parents and an adopted child deteriorates and they cannot continue to live together, both parties can agree to terminate the adoption relationship. If the adopted child is already 10 years old, the child's consent is required. Zai Yun never agreed to terminate the adoption relationship with me, nor did she ask for my opinion, but rather abandoned me on her own. During the adoption, she repeatedly deprived me of my right to education. I will file a lawsuit in court to pursue her legal responsibility. Grace faced the camera, her voice clear and resolute, showing no fear or hesitation. Despite their young age, both children behaved with remarkable maturity and responsibility. Everyone was impressed. The media vied to publish the news, all praising the Zai family's effective methods of raising children, pointing out that Zai Yun was truly the rotten apple spoiling the barrel. After the news spread, netizens discussed it heatedly. But strangely, Zai Yun remained unusually silent, not showing up, not answering calls, completely disappearing. I comforted the children. Heaven's net is wide, though its mesh is coarse, it misses nothing. Zai Yun won't escape. But unexpectedly, 2 days later, the court announced that our lawsuit had been dismissed. When we saw Zai Yun again, we couldn't even recognize her because she had been trapped in the flooded elevator for a long time. Her body had bloated, her facial features strangely distorted, making anyone who saw her shiver. According to forensic examination, on that stormy night, Zai Yun had taken the elevator down to the parking lot but got stuck when the entire building lost power. There was no signal, so she couldn't call for help, and rainwater gradually flooded the elevator. She drowned. Timing-wise, it was exactly after Zai Yun took Grace away and was about to leave the scene. It's just a pity that this time she wasn't as lucky as before. No one knows how desperate she must have been, trapped in there, eyes wide open, watching the water rise to her head. Did she regret all the harm she had caused Grace then? Anyway, one thing she said was right. Karma comes full circle. The despair that Grace and I experienced in the previous life, she had now tasted enough of. In this life, I only wanted to desperately protect the children. I never thought that in the end, fate still wouldn't spare Zai Yun. Reporters quickly published the full sequence of events. Everyone cursed Zai Yun, saying her death was deserved. My father seemed to age a decade overnight. His face was gaunt, his eyes gloomy. No matter how terrible Zai Yun was, she was still his biological daughter. I didn't feel any joy either. My heart was heavy, unable to find release. Zai Yun and I were biological sisters, yet after 2 lives of struggle, this was the outcome. Perhaps the only thing that brought me comfort was that Grace and Leo finally bridged their distance and became as close as true siblings. Leo had joined the provincial team and was starting his path to becoming a professional fighter. Grace, just like in the previous life, became the nation's daughter, thanks to this role. The 2 children, each on their own path, were shining brightly, their future full of hope. As for me, I finally began to take over the company's work under my father's guidance.